I'm Simone Dubois, 32 years old, and for the past 7 years, Aether Corp in New York City has been my battleground. From the moment I stepped into this gleaming skyscraper, I knew I had to work twice as hard, be twice as smart, and achieve twice as much just to be seen. It's a truth I learned early in life, a quiet hum beneath the surface of every interaction. My role as a senior data strategist was critical, though often unacknowledged by those at the top. I was the architect behind the algorithms that optimized client campaigns, the one who found the hidden patterns in millions of data points, turning them into actionable insights. My reports consistently boosted our clients' ROI, yet my name rarely made it to the executive board meetings. Mr. Davies, my direct supervisor and head of digital operations, embodied the corporate culture perfectly. He was charmingly dismissive, quick to take credit, and even quicker to find fault, especially when it came to anyone who didn't fit his narrow mold of leadership material. His smiles never quite reached his eyes when he spoke to me. I remember countless times my ideas were met with polite nods in team meetings, only to be enthusiastically adopted a week later when presented by a male colleague. It was a subtle erasure, a constant chipping away at my contributions, designed to make me doubt my own value. But I never did. My parents, both immigrants who built their lives from scratch, instilled in me an unshakable belief in my abilities. They taught me that resilience wasn't just a trait, but a strategy for survival and success in a world not always designed for people like us. Their sacrifices fueled my ambition. I poured my soul into my work, not just for Aether Corp, but for myself. Each successful project was a personal victory, a quiet defiance against the unspoken biases that permeated the office air. I saw the flaws in their systems, the inefficiencies, and the potential for greater things, if only they were willing to truly see. The office was a microcosm of the city itself, fast-paced, competitive, and often unforgiving. I navigated the unspoken rules, the subtle power plays, and the casual prejudices with a practiced ease. It was exhausting, but I was determined to carve out my space, to prove my worth beyond any doubt. I had a small, trusted circle within the company, a few colleagues who saw my talent and respected my work, even if they couldn't openly challenge the status quo. We shared knowing glances, commiserated over coffee, and occasionally celebrated small wins that went unnoticed by management. These moments were my lifeline. My expertise wasn't just theoretical, it was built on years of hands-on experience, late nights debugging code, and an intuitive understanding of market dynamics. I knew Aether Corp's proprietary systems better than most, including their strengths and their critical vulnerabilities. This knowledge was my silent power. The company was preparing for its biggest quarter yet, with several high-profile client acquisitions on the horizon. The pressure was immense, and everyone was working around the clock. I, as usual, was at the forefront, designing the complex data integration strategies that would underpin these new ventures. I often felt like a ghost in the machine, essential to its function but invisible to its operators. My suggestions for improving data security or streamlining workflows were often dismissed as overly cautious or unnecessary complexities. They valued speed and profit above all else. This quarter, however, felt different. There was a buzz of anticipation mixed with an undercurrent of anxiety. Rumors of a major internal restructuring were circulating, adding another layer of uncertainty to the already intense environment. Everyone was on edge, vying for position. I kept my head down, focusing on the intricate details of the Project Chimera, a massive data migration for our new flagship client, Global Nexus. This project alone was projected to bring in tens of millions in revenue, a make-or-break deal for Aether Corp's annual targets. I meticulously documented every step, every decision, every potential risk associated with Project Chimera. It wasn't just good practice. It was a habit born from years of needing to prove myself, to have irrefutable evidence of my contributions. Little did I know, this habit would soon become my greatest asset. As the quarter drew to a close, the tension in the office was palpable. Everyone was pushing for final deliverables, hoping to impress management and secure their positions. I was no exception, but my motivation ran deeper than mere job security. It was about proving them wrong, once and for all. The air at Aether Corp was thick with unspoken expectations and thinly veiled biases. Every day felt like a performance, not just of my professional skills, but of my ability to navigate a landscape riddled with microaggressions. It was a constant reminder that my competence was always under a different kind of scrutiny. I recall a particular incident during a strategy meeting where I proposed an innovative approach to client retention. Mr. Davies listened, nodded, and then, without missing a beat, turned to a junior white male colleague and asked, "John, what do you think of Simone's creative idea?" The implication was clear. My ideas were artistic, not analytical. Promotions were a recurring source of frustration. Despite consistently exceeding targets and leading successful projects, I was repeatedly passed over for leadership roles. The feedback was always vague, needs more executive presence, or not quite ready for that level of client interaction. Meanwhile, less experienced colleagues ascended rapidly. My ideas, when not attributed to others, were often watered down or subtly altered to fit a more mainstream narrative. It felt like my unique perspective, honed by my lived experiences, was seen as a liability rather than an asset. They wanted my results, but not my voice. The pressure intensified as Project Chimera entered its final stages. It was a beast of a project, involving the seamless migration of Global Nexus's entire legacy data system into Aether Corp's cloud infrastructure. Any misstep could result in catastrophic data loss and financial penalties. I was the only one with a complete, end-to-end understanding of the migration process, having designed the custom scripts and oversight protocols. I had flagged several potential vulnerabilities in Aether Corp's existing security framework, but my concerns were brushed aside as unnecessary delays. Mr. Davies was particularly dismissive of my warnings. "Simone, we're on a tight deadline," he'd often say, his tone implying my caution was an inconvenience. "Trust the system. We've never had a major breach." His blind faith in the existing infrastructure was alarming. I began to keep a separate, encrypted log of all my communications regarding Project Chimera, especially those detailing my concerns about security and data integrity. It was a quiet act of self-preservation, a digital paper trail in case anything went wrong. The stress was immense. I often worked until the early hours of the morning, fueled by coffee and a stubborn refusal to let them break me. My apartment, with its view of the city lights, became my sanctuary, a place where I could decompress and plan my next moves. I started to notice a pattern. Whenever a major project was nearing completion, the atmosphere around me would shift. The subtle digs would increase. The isolation would become more pronounced, as if they were preparing to sideline me once my utility had been exhausted. My colleagues, while generally supportive, were also aware of the unspoken rules. They knew challenging Mr. Davies, or the established hierarchy, could jeopardize their own careers. So, they offered quiet empathy, a knowing glance, but rarely an open defense. I found solace in my small network of professional women of color outside of Aether Corporation. We met monthly, sharing stories, strategies, and support. They understood the unique challenges I faced, and their encouragement was invaluable. They reminded me I wasn't alone. One evening, after a particularly draining day, I confided in my mentor, a seasoned tech executive named Lena. "I feel like I'm constantly proving my worth," I told her, "and it's never enough." Lena simply said, "Sometimes, Simone, the best way to prove your worth is to let them realize it after you're gone." Her words resonated deeply. I wasn't planning to leave, not yet, but the idea of a strategic exit, one that would make them truly understand my value, began to form in my mind. It was a seed of a plan, a quiet rebellion brewing beneath my calm exterior. As the quarter's end loomed, I finalized the last stages of Project Chimera, ensuring every line of code, every data transfer was flawless. I knew this project was my magnum opus at Aether Corp, a testament to my skill, and perhaps my final act. Project Chimera was a behemoth, a multi-million-dollar undertaking that promised to solidify Aether Corp's position as a leader in enterprise data solutions. For me, it was both a professional Everest and a personal crucible, demanding every ounce of my technical prowess and strategic insight. I was tasked with designing the core migration architecture, a complex web of APIs, custom scripts, and secure tunnels that would transfer Global Nexus's sensitive financial data. It was a high-stakes operation, where even a minor error could have catastrophic legal and financial repercussions. As I delved deeper into Aether Corp's existing infrastructure, I uncovered several alarming vulnerabilities. Their data sanitization protocols were outdated, and their backup systems had critical single points of failure. I immediately raised these issues to Mr. Davies and the IT department. My warnings were met with a familiar blend of dismissiveness and impatience. "Simone, we've been over this," Mr. Davies would say, waving his hand. "Our current protocols are industry standard. Focus on the migration, not hypothetical risks." His arrogance was astounding. I insisted on implementing additional safeguards within my segment of the project, creating redundant verification checks and a robust rollback plan. This was done quietly, coded into the system in a way that wouldn't flag immediate attention, but would activate if certain conditions were met. One of the key components of Project Chimera involved a highly sensitive client data portal, which I was responsible for securing. I noticed that the portal's access logs were not as rigorously monitored as they should have been, a potential backdoor for unauthorized access. I discreetly implemented a secondary logging system, a shadow record of all interactions with the portal, which fed into a secure, off-site server I controlled. This was a direct violation of company policy, but I felt it was a necessary ethical safeguard. My intuition, honed by years of navigating complex systems and even more complex corporate politics, told me something was amiss. The rush to complete the project, the casual disregard for security, it all felt like corners were being cut for reasons beyond mere deadlines. I started to notice inconsistencies in the project budget, particularly large sums allocated to consulting fees for external vendors I'd never heard of. These were small discrepancies, but they pricked at my sense of professional integrity. The more I worked on Chimera, the more I realized the company's foundation was built on a precarious balance of cutting-edge technology and outdated, sometimes unethical, practices. They were brilliant at sales, less so at robust, long-term integrity. I began to quietly gather evidence, not just of the technical vulnerabilities, but of the questionable financial allocations. It was a slow, painstaking process, done entirely outside of my official work hours, using my personal devices. I wasn't sure what I would do with this information, but I knew I couldn't ignore it. It felt like a responsibility, a duty to the data, to the clients, and to my own moral compass. This wasn't just about my career anymore, it was about something bigger. The final days leading up to the quarter's end were a blur of coding, testing, and retesting. Project Chimera was a success, a marvel of data engineering, and I knew it. The migration was flawless, the client was thrilled, and Aether Corp was poised for a massive financial win. I felt a strange mix of pride and apprehension. I had delivered beyond expectation, yet I sensed my time at Aether Corp was drawing to a close. The air of impending change, coupled with Mr. Davies' increasingly cold demeanor, was a clear signal. As I submitted my final reports for Project Chimera, I made one last, subtle adjustment to the system. It was a trigger, a dormant protocol that would only activate under specific conditions, a silent failsafe designed to protect something far more valuable than Aether Corp's immediate profits. The last day of the quarter dawned with an unusual chill, even for a New York autumn. I arrived at the office early, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. Project Chimera was complete, delivered ahead of schedule, and already generating significant buzz within Global Nexus. I spent the morning tying up loose ends, responding to client queries, and preparing for the celebratory team meeting Mr. Davies had scheduled for later that afternoon. I imagined a brief moment of recognition, perhaps even a verbal acknowledgement of my tireless efforts. Just before lunch, an email landed in my inbox. Meeting with Mr. Davies, 2 p.m. The subject line was innocuous, but a prickle of unease ran down my spine. These one-on-one meetings with him were rarely good news, especially without prior context. I walked into his office precisely at 2, my posture straight, my expression neutral. Mr. Davies sat behind his large mahogany desk, his usual smug smile replaced by a somber, almost regretful expression. A HR representative, Ms. Jenkins, sat silently in the corner. "Simone, thank you for coming," he began, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. "We need to discuss your future at Aether Corporation." My heart sank, but I kept my face impassive. I had prepared for this moment, though not in the way they intended. He launched into a rehearsed speech about strategic realignment, evolving company needs, and difficult decisions. It was the corporate jargon equivalent of a breakup, designed to soften the blow while delivering the fatal wound. I listened, my mind racing. Effective immediately, your position as Senior Data Strategist is being eliminated, he stated, finally getting to the point. We appreciate your contributions, especially to Project Chimera, but we're moving in a different direction. My contributions? He was dismissing them even as he acknowledged them. Ms. Jenkins then chimed in with a standard HR spiel, severance package details, COBRA information, and the immediate requirement to return my company laptop and badge. It was all very by-the-book, cold, and impersonal. I felt a surge of indignation, but I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. So, after 7 years of dedicated service, after delivering your most critical project to date, this is how Aether Corp repays its employees. I asked, my voice steady. Mr. Davies shifted uncomfortably. Simone, this isn't personal. It's a business decision. We're confident you'll find another opportunity quickly. His condescending tone was the final straw, igniting a quiet fury within me. I see, I replied, a small, knowing smile touching my lips. And I suppose this strategic realignment has nothing to do with my consistent calls for greater transparency and ethical data practices. His eyes narrowed slightly. He quickly dismissed my implication. Of course not. That's entirely unrelated. Now, if you'll just sign these papers, we can get this process finalized. He pushed a stack of documents across the desk. I picked up the pen, my hand steady. As I signed the termination papers, a single thought crystallized in my mind. They have no idea what they've just unleashed. My signature was not an acceptance of defeat, but an affirmation of my power. Thank you for your time, Mr. Davies, Miss Jenkins, I said, rising from my chair. I wish Aether Corp the best of luck with its new direction. You're certainly going to need it. My tone was polite, but laced with an undeniable edge. As I walked out of his office, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The weight of constantly fighting for recognition, of being undervalued, had suddenly lifted. The betrayal was sharp, but it also brought a clarity I hadn't known before. I handed over my laptop and badge to Miss Jenkins, my mind already racing through the steps of my pre-planned contingency. They thought they were cutting ties, but they were about to discover just how deeply I was embedded in their ecosystem. Walking out of that building for the last time, the bustling New York streets seemed to hum with a new kind of energy. I was no longer an employee of Aether Corp. I was a free agent, and my secret action was about to send shockwaves through their carefully constructed world. The moment I stepped out of Aether Corp, the chill of the autumn air invigorated me. The initial sting of betrayal quickly morphed into a steely resolve. They had underestimated me, dismissed me, and now they would face the consequences of their own short-sightedness. My first stop was a small, unassuming coffee shop a few blocks away. I pulled out my personal laptop, connected to a secure VPN, and began to execute the plan I had meticulously crafted over the past few months. This wasn't revenge, it was justice. My secret action was not about destroying data or causing malicious damage. It was far more precise, a surgical strike against their most vulnerable point, their ethical facade and their reliance on my unseen work. It leveraged the fail-safe I had built into Project Chimera. During the data migration for Global Nexus, I had identified a critical flaw in Aether Corp's proprietary data anonymization tool. It was designed to mask sensitive client information, but under specific, rare conditions, it could be reverse-engineered, exposing raw data. I had warned Mr. Davies about this, suggesting a complete overhaul, but he had dismissed it as an edge case, not worth the time or expense. So, I had built a dormant protocol within Project Chimera that would activate if my access to the system was abruptly terminated. This protocol didn't delete data. It simply rerouted a small, non-critical portion of the anonymized data stream to a secure, independent audit server I controlled. It would then trigger an alert to a specific regulatory body about a potential, albeit minor, compliance issue. The impact wouldn't be immediate, but it would be devastating. The regulatory body, known for its stringent oversight, would launch an investigation. This would halt Aether Corp's ability to onboard new clients for Project Chimera and potentially trigger massive fines for noncompliance. Simultaneously, I activated a second, more subtle action. The shadow record of the client data portal access logs, which I had been secretly maintaining, contained irrefutable evidence of the questionable consulting fees and the associated unauthorized accesses. I anonymously uploaded this encrypted log to a secure, public whistleblowing platform, ensuring it couldn't be traced back to me. This would expose their financial irregularities and unethical practices, hitting them where it hurt most, their reputation and investor confidence. The beauty of my plan was its subtlety. It wasn't a hack, it was an exposure, a revelation of their own inherent flaws and ethical compromises. I wasn't destroying, I was simply unveiling. They had built the house of cards, and I merely nudged the foundation. I took a deep breath, the weight of the past 7 years lifting. The system I had painstakingly built, the one they had dismissed, was now working for me, for justice, rather than for their unchecked greed. It felt profoundly satisfying. I then called Lena, my mentor. "It's done," I said, my voice calm. "They sacked me, and now the truth will come out." She listened, her silence a testament to her understanding and support. The next few days were a strange mix of anticipation and calm. I watched the news, scanned industry forums, and waited for the first ripples of the storm I had unleashed. I knew it wouldn't be immediate, but it would be inevitable. I spent time reconnecting with friends, allowing myself to process the emotional toll of the past few days. The freedom was exhilarating, a stark contrast to the stifling environment I had just escaped. I began sketching out ideas for my own venture, a data ethics consultancy that would help companies build truly secure and transparent systems. My experience at Aether Corp had shown me a critical gap in the market, a need for integrity. The quiet hum of my laptop, working in the background, was a constant reminder of the wheels I had set in motion. Aether Corp was about to learn a very expensive lesson about underestimating the person who truly understood their systems. The first sign of trouble at Aether Corp surfaced 3 days later, a cryptic blurb in an obscure industry newsletter mentioning a minor delay in the global Nexus integration. I knew it was the initial tremor of the earthquake I had triggered. Soon after, a prominent financial news outlet reported that a regulatory body had launched an inquiry into Aether Corp's data handling practices, specifically concerning anonymization protocols. The stock price took a slight dip, but nothing dramatic yet. My phone started buzzing with messages from former colleagues, their tones a mix of confusion and concern. "Have you heard anything about this inquiry? What's going on with Global Nexus?" I replied vaguely, maintaining my distance. Then came the bigger news. The whistleblowing platform I had used released a detailed report, exposing the questionable consulting fees and the associated unauthorized access logs. The report didn't name Aether Corp directly, but the details were unmistakable. This time, the impact was immediate and severe. Aether Corp's stock plummeted by 15% in a single day. Major news outlets picked up the story, questioning the company's financial transparency and ethical standards. I imagined the chaos unfolding within Aether Corp's executive suites. Mr. Davies, I was sure, would be in a state of panic, desperately trying to contain the damage. The very vulnerabilities I had warned them about were now their undoing. The Global Nexus deal, once hailed as a triumph, was now in jeopardy. News broke that the client was reviewing their contract, citing serious concerns about data security and compliance. The multi-million-dollar revenue stream was drying up. I saw Mr. Davies on a financial news channel, attempting to downplay the situation, attributing it to unforeseen technical glitches and malicious external actors. His face was pale, his usual arrogance replaced by a strained, defensive posture. He never once mentioned my name, or the fact that I had repeatedly warned them about these very issues. It's a classic corporate cover-up, attempting to deflect blame and protect their image at all costs. But the evidence I had meticulously gathered, and the subtle, systemic issues I had exposed, were too pervasive to be easily dismissed. The regulatory inquiry deepened, and the public scrutiny intensified. The secret action wasn't a bomb, but a slow-acting poison designed to expose the rot from within. It was a consequence of their own hubris, their refusal to listen, and their willingness to cut corners for profit. I felt no malice, only a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about personal revenge. It was about holding powerful entities accountable, about demonstrating that ethical integrity has a tangible, financial value. My mentor Lena called, her voice filled with a mix of awe and concern. "Simone, you truly understood their weak points. The market is reacting exactly as you predicted." Her words were a validation of my foresight. The financial losses mounted for Aether Corporation investor confidence evaporated, and their reputation was in tatters. The company that had once seemed invincible was now reeling, caught in a self-inflicted crisis. I knew this was just the beginning. The full extent of their losses, both financial and reputational, would continue to unfold over the coming weeks and months. They had sacked me on the last day of a quarter, and now the quarter was costing them millions. The fallout at Aether Corp escalated dramatically. The regulatory body's inquiry quickly transformed into a full-blown investigation, demanding access to all of Aether Corp's data handling protocols and internal communications. The minor delay became a full stop. The whistleblowing report gained traction, picked up by investigative journalists who began digging deeper into Aether Corp's financial irregularities. The consulting fees scandal became public, leading to accusations of fraud and mismanagement. Mr. Davies and several other executives were placed on administrative leave, pending the outcome of the investigations. The company's carefully constructed image of innovation and integrity crumbled before the public eye. I received a call from a prominent journalist who had seen the whistleblowing report and, through her own sources, had connected the dots back to my dismissal. She wanted my side of the story, not as a disgruntled former employee, but as a technical expert. After consulting with Lena, I agreed to an anonymous interview, providing context and technical explanations for the vulnerabilities I had identified and the ethical concerns I had raised. I focused on facts, not accusations, letting the evidence speak for itself. The article, when it broke, was a bombshell. It detailed Aether Corp's systemic disregard for data security, their questionable financial practices, and the dismissal of the very employee who had warned them. My secret action was framed as a consequence of their negligence, not sabotage. The public outcry was immense. Clients began terminating contracts, fearing their own data might be compromised. Investors initiated class action lawsuits, demanding accountability for their losses. Aether Corp was bleeding money and credibility. I watched from a distance as the empire I had helped build, and which had so unjustly cast me aside, began to crumble. There was no joy in its destruction, only a sense of profound vindication and the quiet satisfaction of justice being served. My phone rang again, this time an unknown number. It was a representative from Global Nexus, the client from Project Chimera. They were deeply concerned and wanted to understand the full scope of the data anonymization issue I had flagged. I provided them with a detailed, technical explanation, highlighting the specific conditions under which the flaw could be exploited and the safeguards I had attempted to implement. My expertise, once dismissed, was now desperately sought after. This led to a surprising development. Global Nexus, impressed by my candor and technical depth, offered me a consulting contract to help them secure their data and recover from the breach. It was a massive vote of confidence and a significant financial opportunity. The legal repercussions for Aether Corp were staggering. They faced millions in fines, lost contracts, and a severely damaged reputation that would take years, if ever, to repair. Mr. Davies and his cohorts were facing serious legal challenges. I finally felt seen, not just for my technical skills, but for my integrity. My warnings, once ignored, were now recognized as critical foresight. The truth, as it often does, had a way of coming out, even if it took a secret action to reveal it. The justice was clear, not just for me, but for every professional who had ever been underestimated, dismissed, or silenced in the workplace due to their identity. My story became a testament to the power of quiet resilience and strategic action. The dust settled on Aether Corp's downfall, leaving behind a landscape of shattered reputations and immense financial losses. For me, however, it marked the dawn of a new, exhilarating chapter. The justice I had sought was not just served, it propelled me forward. The consulting contract with Global Nexus proved to be a pivotal moment. It wasn't just about the substantial fees. It was about the trust they placed in me, the respect they showed for my expertise, and the opportunity to build something truly ethical. Word of my work with Global Nexus spread rapidly within the tech industry. Companies, now wary of similar pitfalls, began seeking my expertise in data integrity, security, and ethical AI development. My phone rang constantly with new opportunities. I decided to launch my own firm, Veritas Data Solutions, a name chosen to reflect my core values of truth and integrity. I started small, working from my apartment, but the demand for ethical data practices was immense, and my reputation preceded me. Lena, my mentor, became an invaluable advisor, helping me navigate the complexities of entrepreneurship and scale my business. She connected me with investors and talent, ensuring Veritas Data Solutions had a strong foundation from day one. Within a year, Veritas Data Solutions had grown from a one-woman operation into a thriving consultancy with a diverse team of brilliant minds. We specialized in helping companies build robust, transparent, and ethically sound data ecosystems. My success wasn't just financial, it was deeply personal. I was building a company where every voice was heard, where integrity was paramount, and where talent was recognized regardless of background. It was the antithesis of Aether Corp. I became a sought-after speaker at industry conferences, sharing my story not with bitterness, but with a message of empowerment. I spoke about the importance of ethical leadership, the dangers of unchecked corporate greed, and the power of individual integrity. My story resonated with countless professionals, especially women and minorities, who had faced similar forms of discrimination and underestimation. I established a mentorship program within Veritas, dedicated to nurturing diverse talent in tech. The financial freedom I achieved was profound. It wasn't just about wealth, it was about having the autonomy to make choices aligned with my values, to invest in causes I believed in, and to live a life truly on my own terms. I bought a beautiful loft in Brooklyn, a space filled with natural light and vibrant art, a stark contrast to the sterile corporate environments I had once inhabited. It was a home that truly reflected my spirit and my journey. Looking back, being sacked by Mr. Davies was the greatest gift I never asked for. It forced me to reclaim my power, to trust my instincts, and to transform a moment of betrayal into a catalyst for monumental success. My life now isn't without challenges, but they are challenges I choose, battles I fight on my own terms. I am no longer fighting to be seen. I am building a future where everyone has the opportunity to shine. To anyone who feels underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed, remember your worth. Sometimes, the greatest act of empowerment is to let your actions speak for themselves, even if it means a secret, strategic move that costs them millions. My journey is a testament to the fact that true power lies not in the titles we hold, but in the integrity we maintain and the impact we choose to make. And that, I realized, was a victory far sweeter than any promotion Aether Corp could have ever offered.